Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about the first 5 books in the Stormlight archive. So I want to talk about this idea of balance. I've mentioned it before and I've mentioned it in multiple other videos, but I kind of want to talk about why I think Brandon did not do a great job in balancing the ideas of plot and character among these first 5 books in the Stormlight archive. So, with that being said, please make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And if you're interested, you can support the channel in another way by checking out the Patreon. The link is in the description. So, with that being said, let's begin. All right, so I've mentioned before in my rereads leading up to Within the Truth that I think about this idea of balance in Brandon's books a lot as well. So, like, each one of his books have a different kind of balance between plot and character, or like world building, exploration, and character study, and that kind of thing. And I've mentioned the way in which I feel about the balance structure of the original 4. And this one, again, I mentioned in my initial review for Wind and Truth that I don't think it's necessarily balanced between character and plot. But it got me thinking about the entirety of the first half of the Stormlight series. So, I believe the series is incredibly unbalanced in terms of plot and character. So, the bigger plot, the big Cosmere plot and everything, we don't really get into that really until like a little bit of Oathbringer and then kind of barely even Oathbringer at all. And then like we get a bit in Rhythm of War and then we get Wind and Truth. But the first 3 books almost touch nothing of the greater Cosmere, the greater sense of the major plot. We are purely focused on our characters. So the first book is very much a character study of Kaladin. We understand his depression. We understand where he comes from. We understand like where he is and like how he's going to basically try to persevere and kind of struggle through this and everything. We kind of very much get into his character, who he is. Like the book is so clearly his. And then we do the same thing in Rhythm of War, Words of Radiance. It's very much about Shallan. We still got some Kaladin stuff. We're still picking up Kaladin's character stuff, but it's very much about Shallan. Her flashbacks are incredibly integral to her character and her the development in her book. And then we also kind of reach into the world-based plot. We haven't really touched Cosmere plot. We're just kind of getting into a little more of the world plot. And then similar thing happens in Oathbringer, where it's very, very hardcore Dalinar book. Very much integral about his flashbacks, about the nature of who he is, and how that plays into his interaction with the greater plot. But we don't get much of the greater plot. We still are very much terrestrial based. We're still very much dealing with governments and stuff. We have not yet really branched out into what everything means, what any of this means. We're barely on the scale of even mentioning the names of our shards and stuff. But then we hit Rhythm of War and Wind and Truth, where that's basically all everything is. And it does this to the sacrifice of the characters. So it happens first in Rhythm of War, where I really notice it. We're still very much following Kaladin. Kaladin is clearly a very big part of Stormlight. So Rhythm of War has a big Kaladin plot in there, still talking about his depression and about his development and to him moving forward. But it's not Kaladin's book, it's Vinley's book. And Vinley's flashbacks are very minor in the book, and so is her entire plot in the book. She's almost a side character, she's almost completely ancillary. So therefore, the book that should be about this character is not necessarily about this character. It's about the greater plot reaching out into the Cosmere plot, and it's about Kaladin. So therefore, you're kind of abandoning the idea of these very structured character books. You're kind of leaning more towards the greater plot and the more, world and stuff like that. So you're at this point, this is where I really feel like Brandon kind of lets the character pool of it all kind of fades away, because this kind of reflects itself in the side characters. Brandon creates such a great ensemble of side characters and supporting characters and stuff that support our main character focused characters in the first few books, that we become incredibly attached to them. So when he basically has to sidestep all of that stuff in order to go into the greater plot and all that stuff, like getting rid of Rock and basically shunting all of Bridge 4 off to the side, and even all of Shallan's Lightweavers and stuff, they immediately get put off to the side and everything. We immediately feel like something's missing, because our enjoyment of those main characters are not just because of those characters. It's because of who they're around. It's because of how Bridge 4 sees Kaladin. It's because of how much Kaladin appreciates Bridge 4 and stuff like that. So it's like how Shallan feels about her relationship with Adolin and stuff, about how she feels if she's being responsible or doing well by her soldiers and stuff, or if she can actually it's just general character interaction. we need more than just the character. We need the way in which the characters bounce off other characters. That's why in Rhythm of War, one of the biggest compliments and the most positive feedback people give is the relationship with Rabonio and Navani. Like, Navani is already a good character, and Rabonio by herself is a really, really good character, and together they make literal magic because just the way in which they interact off each other. So it just kind of works in this kind of beautiful, harmonious way. But again, in that book, that's Vinley's book. Vinley should have a side character in which she interacts off like that, and it kind of plays in that kind of way because to follow that whole character pattern. But Brenda kind of loses the character pattern. We get into Navani and Rabonio, which has more Cosmere-wide implications. It has more big magic system implications. It has more implications for the war on the galactic scale. So it not completely abandons, but it more or less put off to the side these deep character studies that we were getting used to him doing early on. So I can kind of understand a lot of people's negative opinions by the time we get to Wind and Truth, because by the time we get to Wind and Truth, he's almost completely abandoned that. But it happens in this very weirdly clumsy way. Because again, we still have to come back around to Kaladin. So because Kaladin effectively is like John Stormlight, so like he's that guy. So like we kind of have to come back to him, and he has one of those most continuous arcs. So we need to get to the culmination of his arc anyway. So therefore, in Zeth's book, when Kaladin is supposed to be the side character to Zeth in Zeth's story, it turns into Kaladin being the main character and Zeth reduced to a side character in his own character book. Because the character focus is no longer the main focus of these books because we have to hit the bigger plots. So that's where I end up at this point of it feels incredibly unbalanced between character writing and plot writing, even though Brandon is trying to express a lot of that plot writing, especially in Wind and Truth, through character writing. That's why we get so much of the therapy stuff, so much of the Kaladin trying to help Zeth and Nail and Ishar and all of them and all this kind of stuff. Even though it kind of comes off in a clumsy way because effectively Brandon has to get this, done. It needs to kind of exist in this way. But it's near impossible to write this in such a way where it feels proper organic, especially because he's already compressed it into this day timeline thing. So it's just, I don't think there's a possible way to do it incredibly satisfyingly. So it kind of hits this point where you get a lot of people in the fandom who normally loves his work complaining that he didn't do a good job sticking the landing. And then you get a lot of people who have been reading these books this whole time, but now are somehow shocked and amazed that one of the main themes is mental health. Because it was subtly written in before, not so explicitly pointed to before, but when you explicitly point to it and just kind of lay it out, now people are like, oh, is that what I was reading? Is that what that was? So there's all these weird knee-jerk reactions and stuff happening to it. So it's kind of fascinating to see it happen. And a lot of people just immediately go to it's Brandon's editors and stuff. He needs some better editors that are more willing to chop down some of his stuff and suggest ways of writing it differently. I don't really think that's the issue. I think it has to do with the fact that Brandon almost, because in the beginning, I feel like even if you have everything outlined in the way which Brandon outlines and stuff, I feel like when you kind of get going, you feel like there's a million miles to get to where you're going. So he had the idea of how book 5 is going to go and all this kind of stuff, but I feel like he almost writes in such a way where he feel like he had all kinds of space. And then he hit somewhere in Oathbringer and realized, oh my God, I haven't expressed this idea, shown this, introduced this, done this, done this, done this. So he ends up just having to shun all the characters off to a degree where we're no longer digging into the nuances of who they are. And we got to just kind of crack open the universe. And he just kind of focuses on that. But again, I say all of this with a caveat because he could be leaning more plot focus right now because this is the point at which we're clearly going to jump off and go into the Cosmere more. So maybe books 6 and 7, we're still out in the Cosmere, but then now the actions of what's going on in the Cosmere are coming back home into Roshar, and we have to actually really focus on Roshar. And then the last few books in the series all hit hard character stuff again. So that way it'll be beginning character, end character, middle plot, kind of a balanced situation. But, I can't speculate that until I'll be in my late 50s. So who knows? So maybe we'll still be talking about these books then, and maybe all the balance and everything will have worked out. But yeah, let me know in the comments down below. Are these the ramblings of a madman, or does any of this kind of make sense? Does this kind of, do you all understand what I'm, trying to get across, what I'm trying to say about the balance of the series? Let me know your thoughts about that in the comments down below. So as always, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and check out the Patreon if you're interested. Link is in the description, and I will talk to y'all next time. Peace.